So here we are on the 8th, and as I said, we're going to do the 8th and the 9th today. In Hayom Yom, we'll do the 8th. The Tzemach Tzedek listed three things by whose virtue he was successful at the rabbinical convention in Petersburg. One of these was the merit of, the 32,000 hours that he labored over the Alter Rebbe's discourses over the span of 30 years, from 1804 until 1834. And in 5564, he designated a special period to study the Alter Rebbe's discourses, and in 5594, work was begun on their publication. And we owe many of the Memorim in Likutei Torah and Torah Or, which are the building blocks, the fundamentals of Chabad Hasidus, to the Tzemach Tzedek. Okay, lessons in Tanya, chapter 8. Chapter 12, 8th of Elul, begins on page 200. And in Likutei Morim, chapter Yud Beis 8:12 is on page Kuf Yud Zayin. He begins with a pasuk. Hoya Masa HaTzedakah Shalom. The deed of tzedakah brings peace. The avodas HaTzedakah, and the avoda, the work of tzedakah, heshket ubetach, brings quietude and trust. Ad olam, forever. Amazing how much of this book, and as we look at it, is about tzedakah, going out of ourselves to others. Okay, lahavin ha'hefresh sheben ma'aseh hatzedakah uben shalom leheshket ubetach. To understand the difference between the first part, the deed of tzedakah, and then shalom, peace, which bears heshket ubetach, which brings quietude and trustfulness. So we're going to understand these differences, particularly being shalom and avoida, etc. And we're going to do this, al pi ma she'omer Hazal, what our sages have said. On the pasuk says, Oisa shalom b'meremov. Hashem makes peace in the higher levels. And what does that mean? Peace in the higher levels. He's going to integrate. Integration takes place at a deep level, or let's say, origination of singularity, where everything exists in a state of singularity, is beremov in the higher levels. And as we've talked about many times, learned, and all the differentiation and multiplicity is at lower levels. Now, in this state of making peace, shalom, up above, this is in the context of, and many things can be said about that, so he's bringing the context of that which says in the Gemara, this particular quote, Ki Michael, Sar Shel Mayim. Michael is the prince of water. Well, Gavriel, which is power, is the Sar Shel Eish. He's a Sar of Eish. And as we know, fire and water are opposites. So we're looking at Sholem, as I said earlier, as an integrator, as a place that brings together opposites and harmonizes opposites. So, and they don't extinguish one or the other. This is bimreimah, right, as we said in the higher levels. Claimer, which means Shemechoel sar shel chesed. Mechoel is the sar of water. Water is chesed because chesed extends kindness and water flows. Hanikra b'shem mayim is called water. Hayodim emakim gevei lemakim namach. It flows from a high place to a low place. And that refers to the flow of godly energies from above to higher worlds, the more ones that are closer to his deeper levels of consciousness, to the worlds which are more, quote, external to his deeper levels of consciousness, which we call higher and lower. So that's the flow from internal or from singularity, ultimately, into multiplicity. And Bechinas Eish, Shetevel Alos, Esh is just the opposite. If mayim flows from a high place to a low place, as you see when you light a fire, fire comes from a low place and wants to rise up to the higher place. Lalos lamayla. Hi bechinas hagavura. So that's gevura. The first is chesed, flowing out, and gevura coming back the other way, restraining. So that's bechinas histalkus hashpoah. And that's the withdrawal upward of the flow of chayim, of life, of the life force, mimata lamayla, from below to above. And what it accomplishes? It's not a blocker, it's a diminutor. It's something that makes the infinite, unbounded flow of chesed something that we can take by decreasing it, by mitzamtziming it, by contracting it, that's the word we use, simsum, in order that it can be useful, rather than being a bonfire out of control, that it's a control or we'll put it this more accurately, rather than being a flood of water from above, the Or Ein Sof, so it's contained in a way that's useful. So this is the balance between chesed and gevura. The hen midas negdius, but on their own, of course, they're totally opposite midos. One to flow incessantly and one to totally contain. They're opposite, the hefchias, zuluzu, they're opposite one another. When they are midos, and we give each one a name, chesed and gevura, these two are opposites. However, HaKadosh Baruch Hu also sholem b'neihem. And that's what our word, right? We had the deed of tzedakah makes peace, shalom. Hashem makes peace between them. He harmonizes them and utilizes both of them in a totally integrated way between chesed and gevura. And while we're on the subject, we should be thinking about, I don't want to be prescriptive here, we could be thinking about, we're made in God's image and we have exactly this parallel qualities. We can be totally effusive with our chesed or totally restrained with our gevura, but usually the opportunities that present themselves require a balance of both. So Hima is called shalom, making wholeness or making peace between two opposites. Through this, that there's a revelation of something, a ray, a great ray, and a great flow, from the Infinite One. His name is infinite, and He is infinite. He Himself is not in a measured way at all, right? He Himself is totally, He creates measure and limit, but He is Ein Sof and unlimited. He's much higher. So there's a place where these two midos are in existence and they have opposite quality, but there's a deeper place where they're harmonized and unified, and that's called the place of shalom, a place up above, ad ein case, a place which has no limit to it. It's even higher than Chochmah, Bina, and Das, which also are differentiated qualities. That place is called a Makar Hamidos. Even though Chabad in the Seder of Stalshul is the source, the proximate source of Midos, everything has a source much higher than any differentiation, which here we're calling Lamayla, much higher than differentiation of the Midos, of any particular attribute. Turn the page, 234, top of the page. The Azai, then, in that place, Hamidos Negdias, midos which are, when they appear and where their distinct qualities are opposite each other, Gavriel, as we spoke earlier, Mechoel, the one of water, Gavriel, the one of fire, in that higher place, in that deeper place of consciousness, Nechlalas b'Mekayr, they are inter-included with each other in their source, the shorsha in their root, and it's in a state of actual unity. And their differentiations and the differential is nullified in the light of God's blessed, in God's blessed light, which shines to them in a revealed way. So that's called shalom, integration, right? When you take two opposites or you have an argument, one has this side, one has that side, and you find a way of resolution not by kicking out one over the other. That doesn't create peace. You have to find a way of harmonizing. And harmony comes from stepping back and taking this and that and integrating them. Rezai, and then, mismaznim umistankdim. So then they are mixed and they're sweetened. It's called sweetening hagavoras. The expression we'll come across in Chassidus a lot. Sweetening the gavoras means harmonizing the gavura with the chesed. Like spices, right? Too much pepper, no good. Too much sugar, no good. I'm using these, but in the right mix, we have a very interesting and geschmack taste. So this is the mixing, the sweetening of the gevuras b'chasodim, al yedei b'chinas memotzois, through some intermediary that can resolve both of them. And that's called the kav hamachriya, the beam, literally the beam, or the line which can harmonize two opposites, umat klapi chesed, and it inclines toward chesed, and this, of course, is the midah of rachamon, mercy. Chesed on the right, gevura on the left, mercy on the middle. Mercy is the integration. It listens to both sides, and it finds a way of creating shalom, peace. That's mercy. Hanikra b'shem teferes, which is called, in the language of Kabbalah and Chassidus, beauty, because beauty is something that comes from harmonizing various colors together, not by white or black or red or green, but by finding a way of bringing out something that's greater than both of them in the proper mix. And this is called B'Shem Tiferes, which is called mercy, Rachamim. Rachamim, the wise ones of truth called it Tiferes. Lefi, why is it called beauty? Because Lefi Shehu Kalula Toyev Kalula Mebez Gavne. It includes two colors, Loiven ve'edam. White is Chesed, and red is Gevura. This is also echoed, by the way, in some of the Maimorim on Chodesh Elul, Ani l'doidi v'doidi li, I am to my beloved is to me. And there's a pasuk from Shir HaShirim, which goes on and says, Haroi b'shashanim, who nurtures amongst the roses. And there's a quality of rose that's mentioned in Chassidus, though I've never seen it, the quality of a rose that it can be, under certain circumstances, the red of the rose can turn to white. The red of the rose is the gevura, the fire, the red, and the white is the chesed. And together, then that can be transformed and blended. Two colors, red and white. Umeramzim lechesed and gevura. And red and white, they hint at chesed and gevura. Therefore, Stam Shem Havaya, whenever you see the Shem Havaya, the Shem Havaya is an indication of the Yud K, Vav K, which are also opposite. Yud is contraction, He is expansion. And they come together in the Yud K, Vav K, Shebechola Torah. So the name Yud K, Vav K, Havaya, in the entirety of the Torah, Moira al Midas HaTiferes, shows on the midah of Rachamim or Tiferes, the union of opposites, the harmonizing, the making peace. As is written in the Holy Zohar. Because here, hu b'chinas gili or ensof, when the harmonizing takes place, there's not the illumination of separation, there's also illumination of inclusion, which is the quality of the Or Ein Sof itself. Ha'or Rabba, in a great, great illumination, with a greater power. Mishar Midoisav HaKadoshis Yisborach. In other words, Rachamim is a virtue over the, although it's the third classic word Tiferes, its virtue is that it blends two together, and the power of blending two together comes from the highest levels of Or Ein Sof, where there is no multiplicity. Vehine, that's today's Tanya. Let's stop for a minute. Just need to get a little sip. Any comments, questions before we move to tomorrow's? So we're understanding well Sholem, right? In our pasuk, V'hoya ma'aseh hatzedakah Sholem. The deed of tzedakah brings peace. So we have understood at this point, hopefully understood, but it's certainly explained what peace is. Okay. So this is peace is brought by an arousal from above, the integrating force which comes from the original singularity of everything before they're divided. And that's, we have that within us. This is the deeper levels of our consciousness before they manifest in particular ways. This arousal from above, to arouse a great revelation, a strong flow, from the infinite one, blessed, sholem, which makes wholeness in the two opposites, resolves them into a whole which is greater than the sum of the parts. I think that's important to say. Rachamim is greater than either Chesed or Gevurah, and in its resolution and integration of them brings out a deeper quality. So this arousal from above, this integration, the flow from the integrated to the disparate, and then making peace between them, comes from an arousal from below. This is exactly the theme of Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li. It begins, I am to my beloved. My beloved is Hashem, I is the Jewish people, and we do avoid the down here below. So this, as you said, this to make shalom, to make wholeness, which is simply, in our human relationships as well, to make wholeness, when we have some disagreement with someone else, different points of view, you have to work on it. That's the arousal from below, b'ma'aseh hatzedakah. And in the practical, plain terms, it means giving tzedakah. This is our arousal from below. Tzedakah, of course, is righteousness. Righteousness is the middle path, and it's the path to integration. By coming out and extending yourself to others, that arouses a reflection backwards. The face you show to the water is the face you get back. So this is the arousal from below. Our arousal down here below arouses Hashem's panim face, which is his panemius, to flow down, and below meets above, and above meets below. That's called shalom. So this shalom is created, starts from our arousal from below. B'ma'aseh hatzedakah, with our deed of tzedakah, to flow, to give a flow of life and life force and nurturing and kindness and mercy to one who has nothing. To enliven low spirits. That's a metaphor. This is what we do with others. People who are in need, we give tzedakah. They have a certain lowness and a lowliness, and usually they're fairly humble about it, but humble in the sense of broken. And we can come with something that helps to heal that brokenness. Now, that's true also of the worlds at large. We've spoken about this before in Tanya. The whole worlds are called poor people, because all the worlds are totally dependent on Hashem's flow of chayas, life force, in them continually. So it's a continual act of tzedakah that Hashem is doing by keeping the worlds in existence and nurtured and in balance. And the following is known. Masha Omer Razal, that which our sages have spoken about in the Gemara Sanhedrin, concerning one who occupies himself or herself in Torah for the sake of Torah, in order to fulfill the mitzvah of learning Torah, that one who does that, the language that's used in the Gemara is masim sholem b'palmalya shel maila u'palmalya shel mata. He makes peace in the chambers up above and in the chambers down below. What is it? Palmalya shel maila. What are the chambers up above? Hem hasorim v'hamidos. These are the princes, which are the angels. Again, back to Mechoel, the angel of Chesed, Gavriel, the angel of water. Mechoel, the angel of water, which is kindness, Gabriel, the angel of fire, which is Gevura. And in the upper chambers, there is peace up there. And this is peace amongst the Sorim. And this is also the angels, Chesed and Gevura, indicate certain midos, the midos of Hashem, as we said above. And there's relatively more unity in the higher levels than in the lower levels. So in the Zohar, it points out that the upper levels refers to the Olam of Bria, which is higher than Yetzirah and Asiyah. So there's more integration, also more illumination. There's less need for the concealment because the worlds up above are more capable of taking more light than the worlds down below. And that's so the Zohar describes the upper levels where there's more integration, more illumination, as the world of Bria, and the lower levels, Pamal Yishel Mata, the lower chambers, and Hecholos B'Tachtoinim, these are the lower chambers, B'Frat Olam Hazeh, and specifically this world, Hashofel, this low world, Hama'ur of Toivera, where good and evil are very mixed up. And it's not so easy to see what's the good and what's the bad. And this confusion of good and evil in this world started Mechet Adam Harishon, from the sin of Adam Harishon. That's where bifurcation took place. But good and evil became two sides, and very difficult sometimes to see what's good and what's not, what's Kaddish and what's Choyel. So the Torah, and that's why we have the Torah, of course, to teach us what's good and what's bad, what's holy and what's not holy. And in this world, unfortunately, as we see, the natural state of this world, before any ma'aseh, before any deed applied to it, any avoda, that's another word we have in our pasuk, right? Avoidus hatzedakah, the service of tzedakah. So the ra sholet ala toiv, the evil rules over the good in many cases. Mishikosav is written, as is written in pasuk, that one person will rule over the other. This is the Adam of Kedusha, the human, the characterizations, the whole complexity of the 613 of Kedusha, holiness, versus the Adam on the other side, the Yetzer Hora. We have two sides. We have the side of holiness, Kedusha, and we have the Sitra Akra, the other side. And the pasuk goes on, pasuk in Bereshis, and one struggles against the other. This is the perennial war between Yaakov and Esav. Esav, Edom, red, fire. Yaakov, humble. And this is the war that will eventually, and very quickly, in Mirz Hashem, lead to the dissolution of the negativity, the dissolvement of the negativity. But the thousands of years of history, now we're in close to the seventh millennium, has been a struggle of good and evil, all starting from Adam Harishon. And as we see in actuality, down here in the lower land, meaning us, we live in the place which is called the small world. It's called small because it's, of course, small in relation to the innumerable number of worlds above, but it's also small because here is the most diminutive state of godliness, the most contraction, the most concealment exists in this world. So it's called Olam Katan. What do we see in this world? Sometimes goodness is what strengthens and makes itself most apparent. And sometimes, chas v'sholom, God forbid, the opposite makes itself most apparent. And there is no peace, there's no wholeness, there's no resolution, ad kates, until the end of time, when the good will rectify and clarify the evil. And when that happens, that's a resolution of opposites, which brings everything to a higher state, closer to their root and source, which is the Machar Chaim Baruch Hu, what's the source of highness and resolution? That's the place which is the source of all life, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He. V'azai yispornu kol polei oven. And there, as the Tillim said, then all evil will be scattered. All in el polei oven, all those who are actors in that evil will be scattered. And the spirit of uncleanliness will pass away from the earth. It will be clarified from within the darkness will be turned into light. The underbelly of reality, which is covered over by the clippers, the shells, the clippers will fall away, and the underbelly of reality, which is the Or Ein Sof, will be revealed. And how will that happen? Through a revelation. This is called the revelation of Mashiach, the revelation of godliness down here below, with a much greater light, and a much stronger flow. As is written in the Pasuk, that in this state where we're talking about, where the evil is dispelled and actually transformed and brought back to its source of singularity in the oneness of Hashem, that's called Moli Ha'oretz Deas Es Hashem. The world is full with the perspective, there means knowledge, but we'll translate with the perspective of godliness. Only the perspective will be only of godliness and holiness. V'nigla kavod Hashem, and the glory of Hashem will be revealed. V'zehu b'klalis, in general, ha'olam la'osid. This is generally a description of the future which is forthcoming now. However, in the person down here below, something of this can be experienced in the time of tefillah, zut tefillah, or some other times called es rotzim, times when Hashem's will is revealed. For instance, to take oneself out into the forest or some place where you can just be alone with God. It's called his baididus, im koina, and be alone with your God. So an experience of this is available on an individual level, for sure, but not on a global level yet. In the language of the Rebbe, this is the difference between the geula haprotis, the specific geula that a person can bring, live in a geula state, even though that geula state hasn't yet been realized worldwide. Kim lefi ma'asav, and it all depends on one's deed. And what is the deed? Tzedakah, of course. Tzedakah is called hamasa, the extent to which you literally physically go out of yourself, or in your hisboininess, your contemplation and your aloneness, you get to your levels of consciousness where you feel that you are one with, at least accompanied with, in close proximity with the divine. So this can be zoiche laman, a person can zoiche to this, and this is what we've just described, and I've just put into my own words, is ma'en is something like the bira, the actual ultimate bira, and this can be done al yedei oisek haTorah lishma, by occupying oneself in the Torah for its own sake. In other words, communing, getting close to the Chabad of Hashem, and all of his midos, which are the 613 mitzvahs. He has put himself in the Torah, right? From Matan Torah, and for the first opening of the Ten Commandments, Anoichi, that's one of the Ten Commandments, shorthand for God having put himself, his very self, in the Torah. So by communing with the Torah, which is called learning Torah, and haravonya b'Torah, which is effort in the Torah, and standing in tefillah, in a sense of alone with God, and doing acts of tzedakah, these are all the three kavs, the three ways, Torah, avodah, gemilas chasadim, to realize the Mashiach within you, to realize the Ein Sof, which is normal, or most normally covered over by the klippas. So he says not only by Torah, but also by tzedakah, which is the mitzvah. So we have Torah, learning, immersing oneself in God's consciousness, which is in his Torah, where he's put himself. We have avodah, which is davening. And he said, and also davening which takes place by his boidedness, when you're just alone with God. And we have Gemilas Hasadim, which is tzedakah. So these are the three pillars, right, that the Pirkei Avos say the world stands on. The world is not only the world, but it's the Olam Katan also. It's the human being, the small world. It says in it says in the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer Yahi Pruta La'ani. Rabbi Eliezer Harkinus, before he davened, he would give tzedakah. He would begin with rachamim. And then he would go and pray. The Gesiv is written, Ani, why did he do that? Because of a pasuk, which is in Tillim. The pasuk says, Ani b'tzedek echsa panecho. With tzedakah, in tzedakah, I see your face. Again, panemius. The panemius of Hashem is a giver. That's what his real internality is. He wants to give, so he creates. And that's his panemius, and that's our panemius, to engage with, create, and unify with the other until we become a couple, the world and us and our midos, us and our nefesh elokis and our nefesh bahamis, integration. It's another word for this. So it's, the words of the sages are much richer than the technical word integration, but we can use it. So this is to see, grasp the light of God's face, the panemius of God. He bechinas gilei ha'or, and he said, what is the panemius? What is God's face? Hu bechinas gilei ha'or v'hashpor hadas. It's the revelation and the illumination of the flow of das, that mindful quality called das, with hatavuna, an understanding, which is the word bina, lehizbaynim migedulas Hashem, to meditate, to contemplate, to integrate, as the Zohar says, that from bina, the quality of meditation, that affects the heart. And when the heart is aroused, one is drawn to a level much deeper than intellect. Soulful, full of one's soul. Be full of one's soul, Bigadulas Hashem, in the greatness of Hashem, and to give birth from this relationship, this full-hearted relationship that you have with Hashem, with the Chilav Rechima, love of Hashem, and fear of Hashem, fear of being disconnected from Hashem, or the higher level of fear of wanting and experiencing being oneness with Hashem. And that comes through, at least in part, from contemplation, meditation, which is the Chilav Rechima Sichle. Feel it in your mind, at least imagine it in your mind, feel it in your seichel, as is known. So you see, and so much of how, and every time I'm learning with you guys, it's on every page, he's giving very, very concrete instructions for how to realize this state of consciousness, which we call Mashiach Prati, the revelation of Hashem. And through all of these things that we've just mentioned, what happens is Nevar HaToiv. The goodness is rectified or separated from the bad. And Nevar HaToiv LaHashem, the goodness is separated out and given to Hashem. V'nifrad hara, and when the evil falls away, right, it's now dried up and falls away and separated. Kamashikosev, as is written, so written in a pasuk, where is it? I have a footnote here. In Mishle, Mistaraf lekesef. There's the crucible in which you burn away the dross, the kesef, for the silver, the kur, and then there's a furnace, which is lezahev, two different crafts for the same type of thing, which is revealing the value in the silver, which is in the dirt and covered over, and the value of the gold. The seraph, the crucible, and the furnace. So there's a burning away, right? The power of fire, the power of gavura, being gavuradik with ourselves, to keep ourselves aligned. And, it's a practice. It's a practice. It's called avodah. And every person, according to his ability or her ability to praise Hashem. Pirish, meaning, lefi hilula, according to his praise as Hashem, the way a person praises Hashem, the way Hashem lifts up one lifts up his voice or her voice in song to Hashem, the way one learns Torah because it's the wisdom of Hashem, the way one gives davens, the way one relates to others with a fiery warmth, a warmth in our relationship to all of those three things. This is the way of praising Hashem, from the depths of one's mind, and that gives birth to love and fear. Also, it can be the flip as well, that one's sense of loving God initiates a deeper connection, as does this sense of wanting never to be disconnected from Hashem, which is the Yirah Hashem, also initiates. But also, it's a circle, right? The arousal from below, I'm feeling now that I want to connect with Hashem, and I do by giving tzedakah. That arouses him from above, which brings now those midas coming down and becomes circular. Circular, of course, on the side of Kedusha. So, kocha nevara hatoyev. And in this manner, all of the goodness is clarified, like clarifying, showing the silver from the dirt, or the gold from the dirt. In the dirt, the evil falls away, gets separated. Just like, and he's going to conclude with the conclusion of this mashal, just like the rectification or the clarification, the cleaning out and separation of the dross from the silver and the gold in the mistat of Bikur, in the crucible and the furnace. And that's tomorrow's Tanya. So we have some light shed on the pasuk. Avodas ma'aseh hatzedakah v'shalom. To create shalom, peace above, wholeness, we have to do something. And we have three paths: Torah, avodah, gemilas hasodim, and each one of them with pretty clear instructions in this whole book about how to come to those three things, how to do those three things.
Good morning.
Hi.
So I think that this last idea, I've heard this pasuk many times, and I've heard different ways of understanding it.
Which one?
It seems to be saying that, like, when a person wants to become more pure, there's a positive act you could do. It's not necessarily only regret for wrong, but by thinking deeply about the greatness of Hashem and expressing it and thinking about it with your heart, that makes a person pure.
Absolutely.
I think that's what it's saying here.
It is what it's saying here.
That, like, it awakens the chilu rechimu. It's like a positive act.
Yes.
Hilulo es Hashem be'omek hadas, singing to Hashem with a depth, praising Hashem with a depth of, like, being involved in it.
That's why the pasuk begins with doing. Ma'aseh hatzedakah. Doing something. Absolutely. And it's a great empowerment to know that you can do something. That if you do something, it can have these results. Yeah, very positive. Shkoya. Anybody else? Okay. So we have our marching orders. Tzedakah, go out in wherever theater you're operating today and make shalom, wholeness. And Mr. Hashem, so we'll see you, what's tomorrow? Tuesday, God willing. Okay? Thank you.
No, tomorrow's Tuesday.
Oh, right. I mean, right. It feels like a Sunday. It does. Right. Because I'm away. Yeah. So Wednesday. Today, Wednesday. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.